Hello folks, it's July the 3rd of 2024. Tomorrow, lots of people all across these United States of America will be celebrating the 4th of July. Personally, I will be celebrating Independence Day. I have today with me the Constitution of these United States of America. This from Texas Public Policy Foundation and KeepTexasTexan.org also includes the Declaration of Independence, the Texas Declaration of Independence, and letters from William Travis, along with other historical documents that Texans can get freely through Texas Public Policy Foundation if they'll look them up, or like I stated, KeepTexasTexan.org. People in our country, including our law enforcement and military enlisted folks and politicians that are supposed to swear an oath of office in order to attain that office, are supposed to swear an oath to uphold the Constitution and protect it against enemies, foreign and domestic. Most of them don't know what it contains, nor do they know the Declaration of Independence, and I haven't read this in so long. I'm going to read it with you folks. In Congress, July 4th, 1776, therefore tomorrow, 248 years ago, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We uphold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundations on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which contains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained, and when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislation, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time after such dissolutions to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. He has endeavored to present the population of these states for that purpose, obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He has affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation, for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government, and enlarging into its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us, and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of their these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislator to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our immigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation, and hold them, as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace friends. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America in the General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our honor. This was signed in Delaware by George Reed, Caesar Rodney, Thomas McKean; in Pennsylvania by George Clymer, Benjamin Franklin, Robert Morris, John Morton, Benjamin Rush, George Ross, James Smith, James Wilson, George Taylor; in Massachusetts by John Adams, Samuel Adams, John Hancock, Robert Treat Paine, Eldridge Geary; in New Hampshire by Josiah Bartlett, William Whipple, Matthew Thornton; in Rhode Island by Stephen Hopkins, William Ellery; in New York by Lewis Morris, Philip Livingston, Frank Lewis, William Floyd; in Georgia by Button Gwinnett, Lyman Hall, George Walton; in Virginia by Richard Henry Lee, Francis Lightfoot Lee, Carter Braxton, Benjamin Harrison, Thomas Jefferson, George Wythe, Thomas Nelson Jr. In North Carolina by William Hooper, John Penn, Joseph Hughes; in South Carolina by Edward Rutledge, Arthur Middleton, Thomas Lynch Jr., Thomas Hayward Jr. In New Jersey by Abraham Clark, John Hart, Francis Hopkinson, Richard Stockton, John Witherspoon; in Connecticut by Samuel Huntington, Roger Sherman, William Williams, Oliver Walcott; and in Maryland by Charles Carroll, Samuel Chase, Thomas Stone, and William Paca. These men who worked together to write this Declaration of Independence for these United States of America did so fully knowing, at the total and complete risk of their lives, after their wealth and the lives of their families. These men were not elders. When the battle started against them in 1771, because of their wanting the troops out of their personal homes and to stop the multiple things done to harm their families. These gentlemen were in their teens up through their 30s, as well as the rest of those standing and striving alongside them to gain freedom for their people. And these people that did so were actually only 3% of the population of the original 13 colonies that stood up for the other 97%. I would like to refer you folks to the movie Patriot. It was about the USA at that time, and remind that the depictions in there were actually based on fact. That movie is somewhat historic, to the point of soldiers thinking they should christen the brides as soon as they were married. Therefore, the young men and young women were having to elope instead of having a marriage ceremony within their church and amongst their family and friends. You may also want to look back to Braveheart as another reminder of how things occurred within Great Britain itself before that time. And compare these things with today. Also compare what you see today with the bread and circus used by the Roman Empire to keep control of all the peasants and serfs and slaves by entertaining and feeding them to keep them amused so they would not stand up for themselves. And I learned a bit more today on Tom Renz' Rumble channel. I may include the link in the description for you all. And of all the steps that grassroots movements are trying to do and can work together to do to restore the freedoms that have been given away over the last 248 years that are directly against the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, enacted against us by unlawful legislators through usurpation of the Constitution. Something that at the time of that writing, all those people carried the Bible for reference, the Christian Bible for reference for their laws. All the lawyers did. That was the main reference. After that came law books. And one key thing that was included, and key word that I heard today, was repent. And metanoia is the Greek term for that. And metanoia meant to change your thinking. You repent. You not only repent, ask for forgiveness, but you change your way of thinking. You don't keep falling back on the same ways that are not only ungodly and unrighteous, but that just aren't working. If what's going on is destroying your life, your community, and your nation, you need to start at the local level in your towns and townships, your cities, and then even your school boards, and then to your county levels, then up to the state levels and so forth, on to your federal level, here being Washington, D.C., which, of course, reminder, District of Columbia is not a state and is actually a separate entity from these United States of America as of treaties that came after the signing of the Declaration of Independence on July 4th of 1776, 248 years ago. Please learn all you can. Try to get yourself a pocket constitution, maybe one like this that has your state constitution and state Declaration of Independence or whatever included. You need the Bill of Rights. That is the first 10 amendments of your Constitution, but you need the entire Constitution. We need to learn what was done with the 14th Amendment that shouldn't have been. And we need to actually remember the Declaration of Independence and what it meant, and look around us. Open the window and look outside. Turn off the TV if necessary. Don't just have tunnel vision going down the road. Look around and see what's occurring around you. You'll be a little safer that way. But it'll also bring a lot more knowledge if we try to be more observant and have better situational awareness in all things. Not just our safety and certain things we're doing, but in everyday life. And please, those that actually have the time and are gaining the knowledge, please step up and stand up and take part and strong grassroots movements, because the current two-party system and the people that have been in there are doing everything they can to work together and crush anyone else who is attempting to push to regain the freedoms that have been given away by our forefathers and ourselves, either unknowingly or intentionally. Do not mask yourself from your Creator. Do not take things that there is definite, proven information that it harms you. Speak up for yourselves, your neighbors, and your loved ones. Please speak up for those of us that work constantly and don't have time to take part in meetings. Please share this information. Please do. I pray that each and every one of you that watches this, that shares it, and thanks for your warm comments. I pray that you are blessed in all your necessities in each and every day, including gift of clarity, discernment, and truth. I bless you all, and I thank you all for being a blessing to me and those around you. Take care.